Okay, it's time for us to make our first level. Before we do that, we need to make one change to our player prefab. So let's select player here, and where it says tag, let's click that, click the drop down and select player there. That's going to give our player this player tag, and then just click on the drop down that says overrides here and click apply all. If we go back to our prefabs gameplay folder and select our player, we want to make sure we see that player tag. Now let's go back to resources, go to scenes, and we're going to go into level 1. That's going to be our scene for week 1. So let's hop into level 1 here. And inside level 1 is where we're going to build our first level. So let's go to the prefabs folder in resources. Go to structures. I'm going to walk you through everything in these folders before I turn you loose to make your own little thing here. Inside structures, there's these folders. These are stuff that we'll fill our level with, but we need to start by adding one of our base rooms again. So there's base room 12 by 12, that's the biggest, 10 by 10, 8 by 8, and 6 by 6, which is the smallest. Since in this case, we don't have a whole lot to add to our level other than just areas for us to swing around, I'm just going to do 8 by 8. It gives us a little room to swing, but without being too crowded. And if I drag that right to the hierarchy, that'll put it right at 0, 0, 0 for us. And now we've got our room here. So we need to now start adding a couple important things to the scene before we start actually laying out a level. So in this prefabs folder, there's a folder called gameplay, and the two things that are important for us right now are the player prefab, which we can drag out into the scene view. When you do so and drop it on the floor, it's going to kind of stick it into the floor here, so we want to just grab that yellow arrow or green arrow and make sure we're not stuck in the floor there. We can see a little gap, so that looks perfect to me. And then we want to add this end level button prefab, and what this is a prefab that's going, or the button is going to signify the end of our level. And when you interact with this button by pressing the E key while you're standing inside this little invisible box here, it'll actually change it to the next level. For that to work, we need to add one more thing to our scene. We can right-click in our hierarchy, go to Create Empty, and rename this object to Game Manager. And then hit Add Component. In the search bar up here, we're going to type Game Manager, and that's going to make this script pop up. And this Game Manager script is a script that I provided you guys with. All this does is handle changing the scenes for us and nothing more. So we're gonna just leave that as it is. But we can go to our end level button, hit on this on interact thing. We hit the plus button, and we're going to drag Game Manager into where it says None Object. Hit the drop down, go to Game Manager, and select Load Scene. And we're going to type level 2 here. So we haven't made level 2 yet, but when you get to this, it's going to load that empty scene. And we're doing that now just because when we do finish level 2, we want to be able to go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and so on. One thing that we also want to pull into the scene is our canvas for our crosshair. We didn't make a prefab for it, so we're actually going to go back to our test scene and do that now. So we're going to open up our test scene. We can save our changes to level 1. I'm not going to save my changes because I may have had to go back and edit this in later, so I want to keep the changes that I've made. But let's go back to our test scene here, and I'm going to hit don't save. You guys should hit save. If you have changed things, do hit save. I'm just doing that because I'm kind of stepping back over to some stuff that I did earlier. So we're going to select our canvas here. We're going to go to the prefabs folder and gameplay, and we're going to drag that canvas in down here next to our player as well, and we should just see that blue box thing appear. Now let's go back to scenes and open level 1. There we go. We'll hit save. So you can see I've got all this stuff here. I'm going to delete this for now just to make it so our stuff all looks the same here. Here we go. There we go. So yeah, we're going to go back into our prefabs folder, go to gameplay, and drag that canvas out. We can verify that that worked. If we go to our game window up here, we should now see our cursor appear. For the rest of the video, you'll notice that I don't have one there. You will. Again, I had to go back and make sure I added this in. So yeah, you won't see it in the rest of the video, but yeah, you guys will all have this crosshair now. So now that we've got our button and our player, we want to kind of make it a little more difficult than just walking up to the button and finishing the level. So I'm going to show you some tricks on how to set up the level, and then I'm going to design my own and kind of a fast forward thing. And you guys are welcome to try to mimic what I do, or I recommend getting creative and doing your own so that you can submit it for the level design contest. So to start, let's go back to that prefabs folder again, and we've got the structures folder here, and this is going to be the most important one for you. So if you look at this, we've got the walls, and if you click on them, or you even double click on them, you'll see that this is just a big wall. We have the corridors, which are little rooms that you can get in. You can look at it like that. All this type of stuff that is very nice. One thing that I recommend doing before you start going crazy on placing stuff in your room is next to where it says base room, whatever base room 8x8, 10x10, whatever you're using, there's this black bar next to the objects in your hierarchy. And if you put your mouse on the right side of that, you'll see this little hand symbol appear. We want to click on the hand symbol next to base room 8x8. And what that's going to do is prevent you from being able to accidentally select like one of these pieces of walls. So like if I turn that off, you'll see I can select all this stuff here. But if and you know, this can expand and like kind of make your hierarchy look like a mess. So if we turn that off by hitting that little hand button, we can no longer accidentally select the room. And that's pretty useful for when we're trying to lay out these levels. So yeah, we have these corridors that you're welcome to lay out if you'd like to, you know, make your people walk through some kind of tunnel type thing, something like this, or however you want to do that. There's also these catwalks, which are pretty neat because they have stairs. So I like these a lot because there's not a great way to get the player to be able to move up to another platform without just grappling. So this is a nice alternative to that. So I'm going to place some stairs over here, and I'll go over how to manipulate this stuff in a second. If you do already know how to do all this, you're welcome to go ahead without the video and start laying this stuff out. One thing to keep in mind before you do that is it doesn't need to be possible to get to the button. So make sure that it's possible to get there. If it's impossible, that's going to cause some problems. But yes, in this catwalk thing, there's all these nice little, you know, walkways and floating platforms and stuff that you can mess with. In floor, there's just floor tiles, which are also, you can use as just like floating platforms if you'd like, or you can make like a whole nother floor if you wanted by moving these around. There's a ceiling, so if you do want to make like an enclosed area, you can put a ceiling above it, or I mean, they act doubly as floors, they just have a slightly different look to them. These can also be useful if you want to give the player something that they can grapple to from underneath. So I'm going to kind of just float one right there. And yeah, these pillars I think are more so just kind of decorations. Looks like this one doesn't even have a mesh for some reason, so I'm going to just delete that. You probably won't see it in the final project. Actually, it looks like all three of these don't, so never mind. Yeah, don't worry about these. They won't exist for you. But yeah, all this other stuff you can use to kind of lay out your level. Some important things to note before you start doing this, or some controls involved with how to move things around in the scene. So if we select an object like our stairs here, and you'll notice by default we normally see these three arrows. This is what's called the movement gizmo. There's two ways to bring up this movement gizmo. While you have an object selected, you can press the W key. That'll pull it up. Or in the top left here, there's this hand and then the arrows and the circles. That's also where you can select these tools. So the movement one is these four arrows. If you press the E key or click on these two circles or arrows circling each other, this is the rotation gizmo. You can rotate the objects by clicking one of these three circles. The green will turn it, in this direction. The circles indicate which direction it will rotate. So you can feel free to mess with that. And then if you press the R key, that will bring up the scaling tool, which allows us to either shrink or expand the object we have selected in the direction of the arrow. So if we do the green arrow, it'll make it taller or shorter. If we do the red arrow, it'll make it longer, or the blue arrow will make it wider in this case. If you click the white box in the middle, that will actually do all three at the same time, so that the overall scale of the entire thing, like the ratio, will stay the same. So the object will look the same. It will just get bigger or smaller if you use that white box. Another pretty useful tool with the movement gizmo, I'm going to rotate mine. Actually, you can also do all this stuff by just changing the values on the transform component. So like I want my rotation to be back to what it was by default, so I can just hit the Y rotation, set that to 0, and it'll snap it back to where it was. Another useful tool you can use is when you have the movement gizmo selected, you can hold the control key and drag it, and it will do what's called stepped movement, which means it'll move in a uniform manner. I believe it's 1 unit at a time. So if, for example, you want to lay out multiple of these ceilings or floors in a row, you can select it. If you have an object selected and want 2 of them, you can select it in the hierarchy and press Control and D at the same time, and that will duplicate that object, same as that line of code we duplicated a little bit earlier. And then we can hold Control and drag this over to the right, and you'll notice that when we drag it far enough, it eventually lines up perfectly with the edge of this other one. So that's really useful because, even though this will work the same way, like you'll still be able to walk along this just fine, this little overlap looks kind of ugly. So we can avoid that by doing the snap to grid thing, and have no gaps between our ceilings here, or our floors, if that is what you happen to be working with. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the objects you can make use of. There are some other prefabs like the props. These are just kind of decorations. These do have colliders, so you may be able to jump on them. In fact, let's go ahead and test that out with this little barrel here. I think you should be able to do that. Yeah, it does look like it. Yeah, we can jump right on top of it. So, keep that in mind when you place little decoration stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the basics on how to lay stuff out. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is add some stuff to the scene and make a level. So I'm probably going to fast forward through this bit. I may stop if I think that there's something worth talking about, but again, this is your opportunity to get creative and do your own little thing here. And if you need some inspiration, of course, you can watch my videos and kind of see how I approach things. But the 2 pieces of advice I would give to you if you wanted to do it on your own is, first, test it a lot. And what I mean by testing it is every time you make a change, every time you add something, go up, hit the play button, and make sure you can get through the area of the game that you're trying to get through. Because again, if you submit these levels, it's going to be very important that we have the ability to actually beat it. If we can't beat the level, you're probably not going to win the competition. Also, make sure you are adding everything we add from each week. So in this case, since we only did the player controller, you've already added the player, which means you've already added everything we need for week 1. But in next week, for example, you're going to be writing some more stuff that will affect the layout of the level. Those things have to be present in each week's level. Go away, Malwarebytes. So for each week, the thing that you do for your scripting early in the steps should always be featured in that week's level. So week 2's work should be in level 2, week 3 should be in level 3, and week 4 should be in level 4. You don't have to do just that week. So like week 3 could have stuff from week 2 in it. Week 4 could have stuff from both week 2 and week 3. You're welcome to stack them. But the new thing that you add in that week has to be in that week's level. So make sure that you are adding everything that you work on. With that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and start building out my level here. So here we go. Oh, so another thing that might be important to know, you'll notice that sometimes with our objects, when we select them, the gizmo might be kind of in a weird position. Like in this case, it's way down here, or with this other staircase, it's kind of way over to the side. We can actually fix that by, if you move up to the top above scene view and click pivot, that'll move that to the center of the object. So that can make it a little bit easier to work with. So here's another thing to note, and it's something that I just noticed. So you may remember that I adjusted my grapple range to be like 20 or 25. So you might get caught up in trying to do all this fancy, like you're going up the stairs and you're doing the swing, but really keep in mind in just how long you allow that grapple to be, because I can skip this whole first section of my level by just clicking right up there. And I might even be able to go, yeah, all the way up until what is going to be the end section with how long my grapple range is. So I think I'm going to drop mine back down. See, it's at 25. I'm going to drop that back down to like 10, I think. That is significantly shorter, but yeah, now if I jump, I can get this first one, but I definitely can't get all the way up there and kind of skip a whole bunch of the game. So yeah, I would keep that in mind as you do this, because and another thing too is sometimes you get these little areas where you can kind of skip past a jump or something. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you can reward people if they're good at using the grapple, like I am, for example. You can reward them for knowing how to swing well. But yeah, just keep in mind that whatever settings you apply to the player is what somebody's going to want to, or is going to be completing your level with. So you want to have it at a value where it's challenging enough that they can't just skip everything. They at least have to go through it the way that you intended, just like that. Okay, so I just got my level to a point where I'm pretty satisfied. Obviously, you can make your level as long or short as you want. You can make it, it's your level. You can customize it as you will. But just make sure you remember to grab the button and move it up to wherever you intend for the player to end. Also remember that you can use these walls to kind of section off the room. So if you really want to take use or make use of all of the empty space down here, you can use the walls and really guide the player. This is really entirely up to what you can come up with your imagination. So what I'm going to do now is just play through my level and kind of talk about why I did some of the stuff I did, just to give you a sense. So I use the stairs as a way to say, hey, like, go this way, you're going the right way, and you don't need to grapple. I have a couple very easy grapple swings to make it get the player used to, using the grapple to clear a gap, and then using the grapple here to go up above where they're currently standing. And then here, I show them that, they can see as they come up that the platform is over there, but this wall is in the way, and you can actually kind of do a little sideways swing to get around. Same thing as before. We made the gap, so now we have to go up in the air while we do that. So I kind of aim for the corner and grab it that way. There we go. And then you'll also see now I have this long corridor, which applies the same concept as the previous section. I need to click on the corner there and get swung around. And then finally, I got this kind of challenging final jump here that I haven't actually tested yet. So hopefully we'll see this thing work properly. But you got to jump first. Oh, it looks like it's a little too high. Wonder if I can speed run my way back up there by doing a little... Ah, no, it doesn't look like it. Okay, that's fine. We'll stop playing there. And then... yeah, we can move this guy a little bit closer like that. That's probably close enough. And then we'll shift this down just a touch. There we go. And then this is also useful. This is a useful little trick for you. If you know that you can get all the way through a section and you don't want to have to play through it again, just grab your player prefab in the hierarchy and just move that guy up by grabbing that transform, that player gizmo. In this case, when you select the player, you'll want to make sure you turn center off, go back to pivot, because of the way that line renderer component works. It kind of makes the center be a little funky at first. So we pivot that back to the center. Now if I hit play, I'm right here at this last trick I want to check, and there we go, and it works. And you see if I walk up and press E, well, I get an error, but you guys should move to that empty scene. So, yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied with my level. But feel free to take anything that you saw me do here and apply it yourself, or just get crazy with it. Like, I really want to see you guys, show me how creative you can get, show me how cool of a level you can make, doing it this way. And then once you're done, save the scene, and then you'll have to use check setup in this scene. So, go through and do your check setup for that last step while you're in this scene. And then when we start next week, we'll be back working in the test scene until it's time to make level 2.